3, the BACH area, hoş geldiniz and all that stuff. And a lot of you know the whole history of the excavation of this area. We've been excavating here since 1997, and our first season was characterized, I suppose, by the excavation of some Byzantine burials, the kind of thing that's familiar to those of you in the West right now, some late Roman or Byzantine, sort of that were dug into the Neolithic building itself, all across, in fact. And then in 1998, our building was sort of dominated by taking out the superstructural materials. Actually, we started this in 97 as well. And right from the beginning, this building was kind of cut in 3 pieces. There's this space along here, which we call space 158, separated from this larger space called space 86 by this kind of interior wall that is solid at each end, but is very kind of tentative in the middle, and is in fact so I don't know, lightly constructed that we call it a screen wall. In fact, not a real structural wall. So right, and this space 86 itself was really divided into 2 parts in terms of the fill. One was characterized by the collapsed roof. So that was the kind of in situ collapsed roof materials that occupied us. And some of that is down in the museum and also in the the Paleobotanical Lab. There's a big block of it if you're interested. And that's from the roof. And eventually, perhaps we'll do a micro excavation there. And we took a large number of samples for micromorphology, flotation, for paleoethnobotany, for phytoliths, and so on from there. The other half, the southern half of this building, was characterized by a very rich and varying types of midden. Each of the corners, the southeast corner, in fact, that southern corner of space 158, were filled with a really rich black midden. And then in this area, it was a fantastic mess of superstructural debris. And at the bottom of that, we found an area of enormous numbers of scapulae. We called it scapularium for that reason. And this was like the primary midden deposit after this half of the building was abandoned. So from that point of view, we think that the roof actually collapsed first, and that this half of the building at least was filled, is the latest part of the fill. So then last year, we got through all of that superstructural debris and were down on the floor area, started to excavate the platform floors and the central well floors here. And this again is not, it's again not sort of typical and clean like some of the buildings with a very clear history. It's a very, seems to be a very complicated and messy history, and with a lot of destruction of features. I'll just sort of show you the configuration. There's one platform here, this white platform next to the red painted wall there. Another platform over there in the northeast corner. Another platform here. These are like continuous platforms, one here as well. And then in the southeast corner, it's a little more complicated because it seems that there was some kind of a bench and then a low platform, and then in one of the latest events in building this room at least, was that little platform, little step area over there in the southeast corner. And then there's one other very large platform, very damaged by Neolithic digging, as well as later animal holes in this corner. And the platforms and the whole central floor area at this end, just again, you've got the difference between the south end and the north end. And you can see a nice boundary between our dirty area at this end, with this white wall, this sort of white little bank, low bank here, that separates a large area of a large oven or some kind of fire installation here in the floor, as well as a number of smaller fire installations, probably a ladder area over there, and this whole kind of messy, no nice white floors at this end. At this end, on the other hand, there are a number of white floors, which may not look so white right now. Over there, it doesn't look so white because Bashak and Laurie have been sitting on it and doing stuff. It did look really nice and white. This one did look, it doesn't look very nice and white because, in fact, we are at we've just cleared a layer of packing. But in general, these three platforms are much more carefully constructed and preserved and layered and plastered than this southern area. And in the center, we have this kind of central well of floors that we've been taking down, and they also are characterized by different kinds of fire installations. All of the fire installations in this area here are much smaller than the ones here. You can see in the various cuts that have been made through the platforms that we still have quite a way to go with taking down the platform floors. These two cuts here, as probably most of you can recognize, are what we call post-retrieval pits. And these two cuts in the platforms are burial pits. This one we actually excavated last year. This was the first of our burials, probably the latest as well. And this one is dug from a slightly later floor, I think, in this platform. And you can see that's in the process of cleaning. They've done a wonderful job cleaning, and that's just ready to be drawn, so you can have a look at that later on. And now as we start to take down these platform floors, we can see possible burial pits popping up all over the place. There's one here, which will be our next one to be cleaned. I think there's something going to come up very soon over here. It's looking very suspicious. And there's some other stuff in this as well, but I'm not quite sure what's going on. In addition, we've got some very suspicious looking cuts over here in the western side of the floor itself, especially at this end, and this also might be the less frequent occurrence of burials actually in the floors themselves. So the burials are done throughout the history, just like in Building 1, Building 5, throughout the history of this Building 3. And the sequence of Building 3 is incredibly complicated, as is shown on this side. You can't see it very well because the sun's all shining in our faces. But you can see that the west wall of Building 3 doesn't look very nice. It doesn't look very aesthetically pleasing, unlike the nice walls around here. That's not just because it wasn't plastered in the same way as the others. It wasn't. But it's also because this whole space, or this whole west wall, went through a number of changes in direction and repairs and shoring up. Right now, we can see finally the original line of the west wall. Down here, the series of red bricks that you can see the layer of plaster just along there. Maybe if I come in here, just along here. And then at that point, the floor of space 158 was right down at the same level as this space 86. And then this screen wall was also there at that time. Last year, we thought that the screen wall was fairly late in the sequence of building this building, but now we think that, in fact, the screen wall itself has gone through a kind of varied and complicated sequence. And we can, in fact, see at least two phases, an early phase in the building of the screen wall and a later phase in which it was enlarged, made fatter, larger, higher, probably. So the sequence of the west wall, I'm not going to go into all the details now, but in fact, fairly early on, it started to collapse inwards and was shored up. It possibly did collapse onto the screen wall, and that's why they did the repairs in here. But also it was shored up along this along this edge here by cutting back the original wall, and also then gaining themselves a few inches of space and building this temporary wall, what turned out to be a temporary wall, because that also collapsed inwards. What was pushing all of this downhill, we're not sure whether it was a midden on that side or whether it was some kind of just gravity. But anyway, so the final shoring up and repairs on this wall were done, in which a whole set of packing materials were shoved against the wall here, all through this area along here. In the before that final packing and abandonment of space 158 happened, in fact, some of this area had been used at this higher level of floor for bins, and there was a niche there which we've now taken out. So what we're doing here is now gradually, fairly quickly, taking down this floor down to the lowest floor. It's early floors down below. So we hope to finish this summer. It's sort of a daunting task, but it's now becoming clearer, so I think we'll be able to maybe get it done. So, as long as not too many burials turn up. So that's it. These three spaces up here, for those of you who aren't familiar, are three quite separate spaces from this building 3. They seem to be probably later and were added. They may be related to each other. The two here especially seem to have some common features, but they've generally they have storage materials, especially this one and that one, storage bins. That one was full of a very rich midden, and also materials that were thrown in from some kind of sculptures as deposited sort of some kind of sculpture materials, just like we saw down in the south last year or the year before. So, any questions before you all bake? No, good. Well, you can just walk round. Don't walk along here. You can walk round the whole periphery along there. Okay?